on the WhatsApp group so that I don't drop from this meeting. So you have to weigh your fish accordingly so that you know at what point to change your fish feed. So let me just go backwards a bit. So buy feeds that float. So when your feed floats, you know that the fish are eating or they aren't eating. So the frequencies will vary, which you'll be able to see. So here we have 5%, 5 times 4, 4, 4, 3. So by the time it's at finisher stage, or by the time you want to sell off your fish, you feed them twice or up to once. And then you just ensure that by the time you're done, you want to get rid of your fish and you're not spending so much on feeding. So it's important that when you are feeding your fish, you go around the fish pond. So what you do is you ensure that, for example, if you're feeding for the first time, you start at 8 hours, then 10, then 12, then 14, your last feeding is at 16. So your first feeding early in the morning is much less compared to the last one, which is at 16 hours. The last one is almost as little as the one at 8, and then the one at 12 and 14 are where you feed a little more, because when there's sunshine, your fish eat more. So you have to work with observation. If they're not eating, don't put more feed. Go around the fish pond so that each of them can equally eat properly and eat well. Then what you should also do is set a timer. So whoever is feeding, set a timer so that they are able to tell the times to feed the fish. So it's just not random, not haphazard, and have a scale. So buy a scale to weigh the feed and to also do your weighing of how much you should feed your fish. So those two are very key. Have a scale. So your scale is, what you do is when you want to check, oh, am I supposed to move to pre-starter? You get 10% of your population. So if you have 6,000 fish, you times it by 0.1, so 10%, that's 600 fish, which you have to fish out. So there are casting nets that you can buy, which have magnets. So what you do, you throw feed. Then when you throw the feed, the fish will come quickly, and then you scoop them out. You get a bucket of water. So you put water in your bucket. Weigh your bucket with the water, the weight of the bucket. You can tear it so that you just have the actual weight of your fish when you put it in the bucket, and then you'll be able to know how much your fish weighs. So you pour the water back in the pond. So you weigh your bucket with water. Then when you weigh it, you go to the option which says tear. So it puts it at exactly 0. You count your 600 fish, you put it in the bucket, then you get the exact weight of your fish. So you do 600 divided by the weight that you get. Then you'll be able to know, okay, are the fish growing? Am I reaching my KPIs? What is my target to grow this fish? Are you setting yourself for 7 months, 8 months? So this can just give you a reference of whether you're doing well, whether you're meeting your targets. So that's a way you can do it. So buy a scale, buy a net. IBAN in Lusaka has a lot of the fish farming gear. And then there's also Breathing Fish Farms for Dr. Kachaka. He also has these tools that you can use. Then with the scales, a lot of the Chinese shops have scales, so you can buy a scale from the Chinese shops. A digital one would actually work best. So for fingerlings, like I mentioned, these eat more. Your growing fish eats 3 to 4 times a day. Then your market size fish, 2 to 3 meals to almost 1 meal. Then if you feed 5 times daily, you feed more in the morning, less in the evening. And then if you feed 3 times, so it has percentages. You give 30% in the morning, 40 midday, 30 in the evening. So this schedule matches the fish's natural feeding behavior, which helps reduce waste. So again, if you overfeed your fish, you cause it to die. So your fish shouldn't overeat. So like here, we've listed the different allocations of how you should feed your fish. So 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, and 16 hours. So you start by feeding your small fish often with fine feed, with juice, even the frequency, but the pellet sizes increases. So having a fixed program helps you do proper monitoring. So do your fish farming records where everything is in order. And when I mean in order, it starts with fish feeding, it starts with the weighing. So you can do your weighing every 3 weeks, every month, see what works best for you and how you easily be able to catch your fish. So for example, we're going to look at the fish feed calculation. So to calculate the amount of feed to give your fish, one needs to know the average body weight of the fish. So this is just an example. So for example, Mrs. Piri bought 1,000 fingerlings from Agro Queens Limited. So the supplier has given her the feed management program. So like the one which I've put on top. The fingerlings have an average body weight of 1.5 grams each. So calculate how much feed is given per day. So this is how it will be done. So we have a total population of 1,000 fish, and then the feed rate is at 12 12% from the table, and then 1.5 grams is the average body weight. So we're going to do 1.5 times 0.12. So we get 0.18 times 1,000. So that's 180 grams per day. So that's how much she'll give her fish per day. Then we have to times a day. So we're going to go to the feeding rate. So the feeding rate will vary. So let's say we are doing 4 feedings, so 10, 12, 14, 16 hours. Let's say that's how we're going to go about it. So we have a total of 180 grams for the whole day. So 180 times 0.2 will give us 36 grams. So that's the feeding rate percentage. So let's go back to the table. So the table shows us that fry mash at 1.5 grams is 12%. So you can see the feeding rate at a frequency of 5, but you can even, which you can start at 10, especially if it's very cold. So now we go to this table over here. Sorry, the thing is moving fast. Let me just get to the table so you can see what I'm talking about. So we have this table over here. So we're going with the one for four times. So at 10 hours, we say 20%, 12 hours, 30%, 14 hours, 30%, 20%. So this is what you can use for when you're just starting it up. So you have 4 feeding times. So now we get back to where we're doing the calculating. So so now we're looking at 30%. 0.3 times 180 gives us 54 grams. Then again, 30%, we have 54 grams, and 20% at 16 hours, which will give us a total of 180 grams. So what it is your feeding plan will vary with your population that you have strictly to the. But this is just eating more. Do give them more. If you notice that eating less, give them less. But this over here, so what you can do is you can still go through the notes so that you know, okay, in total this is how much feed I'll need. But what is very critical is weighing your fish. If you don't weigh your fish, you can still do it, but guessing is not very good. You would be really doing things by guessing, by saying, oh, okay, I think we can start pre-starter. Oh, I think we can now move to starter. So it doesn't give you, this helps you plan better. It helps you also plan your resources better. It helps you manage your feeding better, and also to know if you have workers, are they feeding the fish properly? Are they following the plan properly? So you can write all of these things down. You can leave a scale, they'll be weighing. So what I'll do, where I would store the feed, there would be a scale. Every day I would weigh out my feed, put it in buckets. So if there's someone feeding it, I would have already pre-put all the feed in plastics or even small buckets. So if it's 3 times a day, I would have already put the feed in these small buckets. At 10, they'll pick the one for 10 hours. At 12, they pick the one for 12. At 14, just like that, they feed the fish. If they've noticed that they're not eating as much, they'll bring back the bucket with feed. If they notice they eat a little more, they'll inform me that the fish are eating a little more. I think we should add more. So basically, it's observation. Be present so that you're able to see that your fish are actually being fed, and your feed doesn't grow legs to the point that you can't feeding. So this is a very easy guide to follow on. So you notice most even feed companies, they'll give you something that is exactly like this. I know even from livestock services, they have a plan that looks like this. Most hatcheries will give you a plan that looks just like this. So at least you would know it would. This was the let me part. So for the feeding part, do we have any questions? Or that was clear? You can raise your hand. You can also ask in the... Okay, Elijah, yes, please. Mr. Elijah, you can go.
Oh, madam, thank you for the privilege. Um, Actually, I wasn't very clear about like when you should start feeding your fish, like from starter, grower up to finisher. So, like for instance, if you just brought in the fresh fish, like should you start with starter in the
Okay.
first maybe 1 week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't elaborate on like when should you start your starter and your grower. After that, then the finisher. Yeah.
On that. Okay. Okay, I think because I was also dropping off, so some of the important or critical things were left out. So with when to start whatever you're supposed to start is you have to weigh your fish. That helps you know. So the table which I've shared has the weights against which feed goes with which weight. So for example, if you stock 1000 fish, you have to get 10% of your population. You weigh that 10%, and then you know how much feed you're supposed to be feeding your fish. So for example, 1000 fish, 10% of the population is 100 fish. So this is where I spoke of buying a net, a casting net which has magnets where you can easily catch your fish. Then you buy a digital scale which you can find from the Chinese shops. And then with this digital scale, because you don't want your fish to die, you're putting them back, you're just catching them to weigh them and you're putting back. You'd have to get a bucket. So with your bucket, what you're going to do is you're going to weigh a bucket which has water inside, so that your fish are still alive after you've captured them. When you weigh your bucket with water, you would tear the scale. So tearing the scale is just making it get to zero, but with the weight of the bucket with water. So when you put in your 100 fish into the bucket, you might not be able to catch 100 in one go, but when you put in your fish into the bucket, you have the exact weight of all the fish. So you have to count the fish, and let's say your fish is 100 of them weigh 2 kg. So for example, 2 kg is 2000 grams. So 2000 grams divided by 100. So you know that each fish is 20 grams. So if your fish is 20 grams, let me just share the screen again. We go back to that table we were looking at. So if your fish is, for example, if your fish is 20 grams, now we go to this first table which had the weights and the feeding frequency. So we've seen that, okay, our fish is now 20 grams. We have to feed pre-starter. So pre-starter is between the weights of 15 grams to 30 grams. So you know that you're feeding at a feeding rate of 6.5% and a feeding frequency of 4 times per day. Then now you need to change your calculation. So that's why we go down to this part. We know that, okay, our feeding rate is 4 times per day. We are still following 20, 30, 30, 20, which gives us a total of 100. Then we now go down to our calculation here. So we know that, okay, if our fish are 20 grams and our population is 1,000 fish, we're still at 1,000 fish, then now we are going to do 1,000 fish. We know that the feeding rate from that table is now at 6.5% because your fish are 20 grams. They are no longer 1.5 grams. So you do 1,000 times, so 6% of 100 is 0.065. So 1,000, times 0.065 gives you 65. So, sorry, just a moment. It's actually supposed to be 0.65 times 1,000. Okay, so 650 grams of feed that you need per day multiplied by 0.2. Then you know that at 10 hours, 130 grams. So it's just using the feed rate, the body weight, and your total population. So that's how you go about it. You kind of have to calculate, but like I mentioned, this, when I look at this exactly following it to the latter, even with if it's chickens, you find you're underfeeding. So what you can do, observe. If it needs a bit more, you increase a bit more, but the weight of your fish will show you which feed you're supposed to go for. I hope that was a little more clear. Was that clear?
Maybe I can simplify it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Sorry?
didn't. I'm saying there are some questions that I did actually looking at
Mm-hmm.
the concept that like yesterday. Yeah, so like to
Yes.
just to help you on its calculation, remember you said that the fish that you caught there, the the body mass was 20 grams. So on the
Yes.
table, we are given something like between 15 grams and 30 grams. We are
Correct.
going to use the body mass. We are getting 30 grams. So when you
Y-
multiply 30 grams multiplied by the feeding rate, which is 6.5, and then you
6.5.
multiply you multiply again with the population. So the population we are looking at 1,000. So when you do your math very well, I think it will give you something like 500 grams. So that 500 grams again, you take it and go back to the feeding timetable. So on the feeding timetable, we are told that we are supposed to feed 4 times. So on
Yes.
that 4 times, they have got the four numbers there. We have got the 20%, and then there was also 30%, and the 30%, and the last one was 30 or 20%, meaning it was divided into.
Correct. So it might take a bit of time for those who are still feeling a bit behind. But when you go through the calculations, you just sit down and you can just play around with the calculations, your populations. You'll be able to pick it up easily. So with it, you follow the feeding rate. However, like I mentioned, sometimes you find that you're underfeeding your fish. So it's just important that instead of underfeeding your fish, you can feed a little more. The first time I followed this to the latter, and the fish were being underfed. So I had to slightly increase it. So just feed to appetite, which is very, very key. Feed to appetite, but this is your guide on how to calculate and how to just have your numbers right, and so that you have a feel of how to go about it. So this makes it easier, so you're not just doing things randomly. So let me when do I get to change the feed? Okay, so you get to change the feed after you weigh it. So we spoke of how you have to get 10% of your population. That's when you change your feed type. You have to wait, know the average grams of 10% of your population. So you have to buy a scale so that you're not guessing. You can do guesswork kind of farming, but you end up spending more and wasting your resources. So we shouldn't do guesswork but have our weights in place. So let me just go to the second document. Okay, so the second document it's just a combination of everything and those other types of fish farming explained into more detail. So let me just get to that screen. However, we're going to now look at the diseases and zero in into a little more of the record keeping. So maintaining healthy fish is one of the most important aspects of successful aquaculture. So poor health reduces the growth, it increases the mortality and leads to financial losses. So fish diseases are usually caused by fungi, by bacteria, by parasites, or just very poor environmental conditions such as low oxygen, dirty water, or poor feeding practices. So most diseases can be prevented through good management, but when they my apologies for that. So most diseases can be prevented through good management, but when they occur, quick action is necessary to reduce losses. So for much smaller operations, you find that you don't have high disease pressure. So when you have high disease pressure, what it is that you really just have to manage your water. So water management is very key. Your source of water is also key, and just your general hygiene practices. If, for example, you see any dirt in your pond, you should also buy a scooping net. When you see green things forming or feed forming on the surface where the fish haven't eaten, you scoop out the dirt. Any dirt that you see, you scoop it out so that you just ensure you have a clean environment. So we have a fungal disease, which is a water mold disease. So what you notice is that there'll be cotton-like things on your fish with gray patches on their skin or gills or the eggs. So the causes of this one is poor water quality, handling injuries or stress. So for example, when you buy fingerlings, some of them you notice that they'll have, if they've been really stressed, you'll notice that they'll have white patches around them, white patches on the gills, on the eggs, and then you'll be able to know that there has been a challenge in your water or there's a challenge with the handling. So it causes your fish to die. So they're practically rotting. So this is something common with new fingerlings. Then you also have bacterial diseases. So this is where you notice white spots around the mouth, the gills, the fins, or like ulcers on the skin of your fish. So the causes of this is poor water conditions, overcrowding of your fish. So if you do have a situation where you're overcrowding your fish, manage the water quality. If your fish are stressed, it also just really alludes to water quality. So poor water quality affects your fish. Again, if your water is too little, it will cause your fish to get stressed. So just ensure you don't stress your fish. So the effects of this, you have a high mortality in your fingerlings. You just wake up one morning, a lot of fingerlings are dying. And that's what happened when we ordered fingerlings. So in terms of handling, they were very stressed. And when they were stressed, the next day we just noticed a lot of mortalities. So what you do when you notice mortalities and it's an issue of you, maybe you purchased fingerlings from a particular hatchery, collect all those mortalities, count them. If it's a close by hatchery, you can go to the hatchery, take pictures as evidence, show them that this is what has happened, and they can reimburse you, and that's something that they're supposed to do. So it is your right as a customer when you notice something is off. With all things being equal, your water was okay, everything was just okay, you can go back to the hatchery and lodge a complaint. Then we have Aeromonas infection. So this is swollen belly. So there are ulcers, red patches on the body. Your fish also have loss of appetite. The causes is practically dirty water, poor nutrition, and sudden temperature changes. So these do affect the fish. You notice, yes, quite alright, fish just live in water, but they are quite sensitive. So by all means, just try to make a good environment for them so that you don't stress them and they're able to get to the market weight at the right time. Then we have parasitic diseases. So this is white spot disease. The symptoms are tiny spots on the skin, the gills, and then you will see that the fish are rubbing against the pond wall because now it's itchy. So its causes is just a parasite. So I've written the name of the parasite, but the effects is fish struggle to breathe and they die if left untreated. So you have to really manage that well. Then we have gill flukes. So this is where fish are now gasping at the water surface and rapid gill movement. So the gills get damaged. So with this one, also alludes to poor water management. So manage your water well. I think I had mentioned yesterday when your fish are stressed, you notice that they'll come to the surface early in the morning and you will see their mouths and they're gasping for air, they're gasping for oxygen. So ensure that all the time you aerate, or if you can't manage to get an aerator, you elevate the water pipes so that fresh water goes in, or frequent circulation of your water so that your fish actually grow. With poor oxygen, it affects the growth of your fish. So your fish need oxygen. Oxygen is found in fresh, clean water. So fish health and disease management, the best way to deal with fish diseases is prevention through proper management. So maintain good water quality, do your water testing. You can buy just a basic water quality meter. They were about 1,000 kwacha from IBAN. You can get that it will test your pH. The smaller ones don't test so many parameters, but the very big water quality meters are quite expensive, so they can fetch as much as 25,000 kwacha. So if you're doing this on commercial level and you just need to have your water right, obviously you would invest in one of the big ones. But generally for smaller operations, you can get the smaller water quality meter, or you just ensure you're managing your water very well. Pumping out, pumping in, observe the color, turbidity, fish behavior. So it's really by observation. And the longer you do it, just after one cycle, you would have learned, you would have gotten your fingers burned, you would have seen mortalities happen. So you would learn quite a lot. So losing fish is also part of the game. So you shouldn't feel bad if you have mortalities. That happens. And that's how you learn through the process. So avoid overcrowding your fish. That is very key. Stock the recommended number of fish per square meter. For me, I took a bit of a risk, pushed it to 8, so you can start from 5. I pushed it to 8 because I was looking if we do slightly less, the monies won't make sense in terms of sales, knowing that would be selling a little less fish. So you can just hike your numbers a bit. So others, you shouldn't actually mix two different types of fish from different places. If you have one pond, just stock at once. Don't stock this week, then again, because you didn't have enough money, you bring in new fingerlings because the resources weren't enough. Stock once and for all, and that's it. Because there are others who maybe the resources weren't enough, they bring them at different times. So now you're in a situation where you have to quarantine new fingerlings, which should never be the case. Then handle fish carefully to prevent injuries, and then use quality feeds to boost immunity. So get feeds from reputable companies. We have Ala Aqua. Ala Aqua is also very good feed. However, it sells very fast, so sometimes you won't find it. So I was using Zambif Novatech feed, so practically just Novatech feed, but there are new companies coming into the markets that also have fish feed, and you can also do your own feed formulations. There are people who train on feed formulation, but the tricky part with feed formulating is if you don't get the right protein percentages, your fish won't grow, which will just reduce the growth. Then there was also the national milling feed. We're so used to use that feed. It's also okay. So it really just depends up to you on which feed you decide to go for. So remove dead or sick fish immediately. You notice there's fish which is molding, there's dead fish. You remove it, you don't leave it on the surface to just avoid spreading of diseases. So clean your ponds, clean the surroundings just to maintain good health. So there are different ways to treat your fish if you just really want to treat it, but in most cases you find that it has already died. But if you notice anything, you can do salt bath. So this is a 2 to 3% solution for 5 to 10 minutes against external parasites like the itch or fungi. So you can put your fish, the ones which are affected, in a salt bath, and then you put it back. So there's also potassium permanganate, so used as a disinfectant for ponds. So you apply carefully, so 2 to 4 milligrams per liter. Then there's also formalin, which you use 25 milligrams for 1 hour, so it controls external parasites and fungal infections. Then we have lime to stabilize the pH, so it also helps disinfect pond bottoms and stabilize pH. So you can use your lime especially before your stocking for cleaning. But really with these diseases, it's mainly, what I've noticed is it's on very large operations. So for me, who's not doing it at a very large operation, if a fish you notice that it's looking dull, looking sick, it will die, we'll remove it. But really for disease management, if you're really affected by disease, then it's really just your water quality. But a lot of these treatments, you find that by the time you want to try and treat that fish, it's already dead. But this is just good for you to know and for you to have in mind. So always consult a fisheries officer or an aquaculture specialist before applying chemicals or antibiotics to avoid overdosing or harming of your fish. So before you rush to do any of these things, just consult first. But water management, just manage your water so that you don't have any of these. Frequent monitoring, use of quality feeds, correct stocking rates, and you're good to go. You don't have to go through all of this stress of doing this, applying this. It really just comes back to your water management. So record keeping and basically your fish farm management. Successful fish farming requires more than just raising fish or just throwing fish in feed in a pond and stocking, but it really depends on organized farm management and accurate record keeping. So records will help you make informed decisions, identify problems early, and also just help you as a measure of profitability. So without records, it is difficult to know whether use fish farm you're doing is making a profit or loss. You'll be there buying feed, but you don't record how many bags it took to raise 6,500 fish. You'll be there not knowing anything, not knowing your mortalities. So just keep your costs. So what you can do is you can simply open an Excel spreadsheet. You can simply just get even a notebook. You write date of stocking. You put date of stocking 31st, let's say it was in March, 31st March or 30th March, you put the date, 6,500 fish. Every time you buy feed, you keep your feed receipts in a sleeve, in a plastic sleeve, or you enter it in the Excel sheet, enter it in the book. You bought this amount of feed. This feed finished on this date. We moved on to this. We took 3 months to use this sort of feed. We moved on to this one, pre-starter for a month and a half. Then we moved to starter for 3 months. Then we moved to grower, finisher, all of that. You have that in record. You can buy a clipboard to put all of these things so that if you have a manager or a supervisor, they're able to record, and it's very simple for you to follow through. But keep your costs, know your costs. So KPIs for fish farming is weight. So you use weight as your major key progress indicator. So that one is very key for you to know your weights so that you know exactly what to do. So the importance of record keeping, it monitors the performance of the fish, so the growth, the survival rate, and feed use. If you have a mortality, right, we lost 5 fish. Last time we received fingerlings, we lost about 100. So we wrote mortalities, there's a record, 100. Or maybe by the end of the cycle, you'd have lost 600 fish, which is a bit on the very high side, because what are you going to make? And not all your fish will reach the right market weight when you want it to reach the right market weight. So it just helps you determine the profitability of the business. It provides evidence when you're seeking a loan, you're seeking a partnership, you want to apply for a grant. You need all your records in place. Is this business bankable? Is it making sense? Is it making sense for you as the fish farmer? So it also just helps you plan in future production cycles. So you know, okay, we need to increase our production. We need to double our production. We need to triple our production. We need to reduce our production. We need to manage our costs. So it just keeps you like in the know of what is happening. So records also assist in identifying causes of losses, such as disease outbreaks or poor feed, or generally just poor management of your operation. This just helps with that. So key records to keep: date of stocking, very important, number of fingerlings stocked, your source of your hatchery, then the average weight of stocking. For example, 1,000 tilapia fingerlings from Agro Queen's hatchery stocked on 5th March at 2 grams each. Then the other records that you have to keep are type of feed used, so starter, grower, finisher, you put all of that, the feeding rate, the frequency, you have all of those records, very elaborate. We did this for a month and a half, we got to this weight, we weighed at this time. So if you say we're going to be doing our weighing every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, you're able to do it. You don't want to do it too frequently where you stress your fish, so you just give it a bit of time. 3 weeks at least, you're able to know. So records also help calculate the feed conversion ratio, so how much feed is required to produce 1 kg of fish. Obviously 1 kg of fish, like I mentioned, in your pond, it would take you roughly, if you're feeding them well, it would take you roughly 1 year to get to a kg. Yeah, 800, 900 grams within a year, you'd be able to get to that weight. So by 6 months, you're able to reach 500 grams, 450 grams. That is possible, provided you're doing proper management. So sample of weight of fish, 2 to 4 weeks. So 3 is actually the best. So you do your mortalities weekly, daily, you calculate that. You also do your survival rate. So at the end of the cycle, what was your survival rate from 6,500 fish? Maybe you only, with the mortalities you counted, maybe you only remained with 6,200 fish. So you're able to check that. And then you do your expected harvest weight. So let's say your target is within 6 months, I want to reach 500 grams. So within 6 months, have you reached that target weight? So you just set yourself up. You see if you're following it up. For example, you can do average weight after 8 weeks equals maybe 50 grams. Then your mortality is equal to 3%. So you see your mortalities as you are going. So you're able to just have, your KPI set. You have all of these set for yourself. You're able to mark what is happening, and you're able to, just have records of where your growth is going. So successful fish management requires more than just raising fish. It depends on organized management and accurate record keeping. So record will always just help you make informed decisions. Then you have your harvest records, your date of harvest, your quantities harvested per kg, your average fish size, your price sold per kg, the market or your buyer. For example, 600 kg of fish, you've sold it at 70 kwacha per kg at a local supermarket. 70 kwacha per kg, that's what you can do at retail. So you find that at usually at depending on your buyer. Yesterday we talked of different buyers. Maybe your buyer can only buy for you at 40 kwacha per kg. So you have to be careful. You need to know really. So let's say it's at 40 kwacha. 40 kwacha by 600 kg. That's 24,000 kwacha at the end of the cycle. And let's say maybe your costs were 30,000. You're already at a loss. So really, you have to do your numbers well, know your numbers well, so you're not just making, your business isn't just keeping your money for 7 months and you're not making anything. So if you sell at 70 kwacha per kg, that's 42,000. So it becomes really tricky if you target wholesale buyers. So again, your target should be who can buy it at a better price. If you're going to aim for retail, you know that you'll be offloading your fish at a slower rate, but you make more money. So you can see at 40 kwacha, you're making 24,000. At 70 kwacha, you're making 42,000. So really, that also just sets you up for success. There was an outgrower program I was part of. The price was very low, regardless of how the market price of fish changed. So whenever you enter an agreement, see the agreement that if the market price changes, does it affect the price that your buyer will buy at? The price they were buying at was extremely low, like very, very low. It did not make sense. And at the end of the cycle, we did all the records. It was a loss. So you can imagine all the time wasted, energy. We literally got nothing from it. So whenever you enter agreements, or someone is going to buy your fish, they'll provide what is key, what is critical. Know your numbers. Sometimes you're just better off doing these things on your own, finding your own market. If you have a place you can set up a store, a fish store, that is even at your advantage. But load shedding really changed the dynamics of people buying in bulk. So it really is a challenge. If you're able to do smoked fish, even better, more value for what you're doing. So your financial records are your expenses, fingerling purchase, your feed costs, production, construction, maintenance costs. After you harvest your fish, you notice that if you're using pond liners, maybe the liners get cut by the fins of the fish. You have to work on maintenance, your labor costs, your transport costs, medicines or chemicals, but really you won't use much chemicals. So your income, total fish sales from harvest, byproducts, if any. There are people who actually buy the sludge, they dry it up, so that sludge found at the bottom of the pond. There are people that use it as manure. It's very good. So to also just calculate your profitability, it's your total income minus your total expenses. You see if you made a profit or if you made a loss or you've just broken even. So practical tips for good management: keep all your records in a logbook, keep all your receipts in a folder. So you can have a folder, you can say fish farming folder, feed receipts in one place, but you're recording them into an Excel or into a book physically. Labor costs, how much you're paying. Maybe it's a worker that is just dedicated to the fish ponds. You have where he has his salary during that 6 months or 8 months, how much you're paying him for feeding. People who are harvesting, this you just decide that, okay, maybe if we had 5 harvesters, you charge each person for that entire day gets maybe 50 kwacha each, so you can have that cost. The people who are washing, a separate cost, all of these things. So you just feel it's really entirely up to you how you want to work it out. Or maybe you have permanent labor, the same permanent labor on the farm, that's what you use to do your harvesting and so forth. So review your monthly records to assess your performance, and then use the records to adjust your stocking, feeding, and management practices. So all of these things are a guide in helping you know the success of your fish farm or whatever you decide to do. Always have records. You want to apply for a grant, they need records. So keep your records very well. Keep your receipts. They'll tell you we need to do an audit of your company. You have no receipts, you have nothing to show, and that becomes a challenge because now they'll tell you, okay, we need an external auditor. You can't do an audit because you don't have any records. You never kept records because you thought the business is still very small. So it's always just important to keep records of whatever you do. Let me just see if there's anything that I had missed out.